Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the live studios at Sri Radha Lane here in Houston, Texas, ISKCON of Houston, right next to Sri Radha Nila Madhava's beautiful temple and beautiful deities. We're continuing today to read the introduction of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, and I'd like to make a short announcement that today we completed 71 pages recording the Chaitanya Charitamrita for the audiobook, the official audiobook for the BBT, which was quite enlivening. And I think we've reached a certain zone that if I stay in, we'll be able to get the thing done. It was very nice. Okay, welcome to all of you out there in cyberspace. We hope you're all healthy and well and ecstatic in Krishna consciousness. This is the Rath Yatra season. There's lots of Rath Yatras going on here and there. I got a report from Rati Manjari that she went to a Rath Yatra in Antwerp, Belgium, yesterday. Got some pictures from it. So I hope you all are having festive moods and happy chanting Hare Krishna, especially in public. I just read a little excerpt from the Swami in the Strange Lands, where Yogeshwar was describing how Prabhupada went out for the first time in the public to chant. It was incredible. And all the devotees simultaneously are feeling a transcendental enthusiasm enter their hearts by going out and chanting in public. Just wonderful. Okay. So let us jump right into it. We first read the glorification of Sanatana Goswami for the Srimad-Bhagavatam. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of light to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabho, Kalidvan Doditaditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya, Prema Varshak Sharayate, Sarvada Sarvasevyaya, Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin, Madguro Man Mahadana, Man Nistadaka Mad Bhagya, Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhuta dayin, atini chuchatakara, anamunchagadachin mam, premna rit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Sit in that chair because it's more comfortable for you. No. No.
I can raise it.
No, all right. All right. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay, Hare Krishna. It's not coming up on my screen, which I don't know why. We'll just try it again. There it is. But somebody's going to have to tell me where we are because I lost my place over here. It was right after. It was right after Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, wasn't it?
There's like 1 and 2 is it is the sloka is explaining the mission of the Lord in gist. So you read that 1 and 2 and then you stopped. Can I show you?
Yeah.
Like he did the 100 slokas and then we read this too and we stopped.
Oh. Okay. Thank you very much. Pardon the short interruption while I find my place in the program. There's a. Anyway, I'll put a bookmark. Starting today, I'll put a bookmark.
I think that the paragraph starts with the Lord was then married. Right?
No, I don't think so.
The Lord explained the word mukti
Yeah,
to be equal.
that's where. That's where. Just a second. I'm almost there. Quite a journey into the philosophy we had there. Okay. All right. We're continuing with the short sketch of the life of Lord Chaitanya, which is very appropriate that Srila Prabhupada chose to put this in the introduction, because Lord Chaitanya came to preach the Srimad-Bhagavatam, and even in India, Lord Chaitanya is not so well known as he should be. So the last thing we heard were the 2 verses that were composed by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was a great scholar and literally the guru of tens of thousands of sannyasis, and he taught Vedanta philosophy. And Lord Chaitanya just delivered him from his misconception that Krishna was not a person. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya went into complete ecstasy in pure love of God, and then he composed 100 verses glorifying Lord Chaitanya on the spot. Such a great scholar. So I'll read to you these 2 verses again to remind us, and then we'll continue with the sketch of Lord Chaitanya's life. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya prayed, "Let me surrender unto the personality of Godhead, who has appeared now as Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is the ocean of all mercy and has now come down to teach us material detachment, learning, and devotional service to himself. 2. Since pure devotional service of the Lord has been lost in the oblivion of time, the Lord has appeared to renovate the principles, and therefore I offer my obeisances unto his lotus feet." The Lord explained the word mukti to be equivalent to the word Vishnu, or the personality of Godhead. To attain mukti, or liberation from the bondage of material existence, is to attain to the service of the Lord. The Lord then proceeded towards South India for some time and converted all he met on the way to become devotees of Lord Sri Krishna. Such devotees also converted many others to the cult of devotional service or to the Bhagavata Dharma of the Lord. and thus he reached the bank of the Godavari, where he met Srila Ramananda Roy, the governor of Madras, on behalf of Maharaj Prataparudra, the king of Orissa. His talks with Ramananda Roy are very important for the higher realization of transcendental knowledge, and the conversation itself forms a small booklet. We shall, however, give herewith a summary of the conversation. Sri Ramananda Roy was a self-realized soul, although outwardly he belonged to a caste lower than the Brahmana in social status. He was not in the renounced order of life, and besides that, he was a high government servant in the state. Still, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted him as a liberated soul on the strength of the high order of his realization of transcendental knowledge. Similarly, the Lord accepted Srila Haridas Thakur, a veteran devotee of the Lord coming from a Mohammedan family. And there are many other great devotees of the Lord who came from different communities, sects, and castes. The Lord's only criterion was the standard of devotional service of the particular person. He was not concerned with the outward dress of a man. He was concerned only with the inner soul and its activities. Therefore, all the missionary activities of the Lord are to be understood Therefore, all the missionary activities of the Lord are to be understood to be on the spiritual plane. Therefore, all the missionary activities of the Lord are to be understood to be on the spiritual plane, and as such, the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or the cult of Bhagavata Dharma, has nothing to do with mundane affairs, sociology, politics, economic development, or any such sphere of life. Srimad-Bhagavatam is the purely transcendental urge of the soul. When he met Sri Ramananda Roy on the bank of the Godavari, the Varnashrama Dharma followed by the Hindus was mentioned by the Lord. Srila Ramananda Roy said that by following the principles of Varnashrama Dharma, the system of 4 castes and 4 orders of human life, everyone could realize transcendence. In the opinion of the Lord, the system of Varnashrama Dharma is superficial only, and it has very little to do with the highest realization of spiritual values. The highest perfection of life is to get detached from the material attachment and proportionately realize the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The personality of Godhead recognizes a living being who is progressing in that line. Devotional service, therefore, is the culmination of the culture of all knowledge. When Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appeared for the deliverance of all fallen souls, he advised the deliverance of all living entities as follows. The Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead, from whom all living entities have emanated, must be worshipped by all their respective engagements, because everything that we see is also the expansion of his energy. That is the way of real perfection, and it is approved by all bona fide acharyas, past and present. The system of Varnashrama is more or less based on moral and ethical principles. There is very little realization of the transcendence as such, and Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rejected it as superficial and asked Ramananda Roy to go further into the matter. Sri Ramananda Roy then suggested renunciation of fruitive actions unto the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita 9:27 advises in this connection, whatever you do, whatever you eat, and whatever you give, as well as whatever you perform in penance, offer to me alone. This dedication on the part of the worker suggests that the personality of Godhead is a step higher than the impersonal conception of the Varnashrama system. But still, The relation of the living being and the Lord is not distinct in that way. The Lord therefore rejected this proposition and asked Ramananda Roy to go further. Roy then suggested renunciation of the Varnashram Dharma and acceptance of devotional service. The Lord did not approve of this suggestion also for the reason that all of a sudden one should not renounce his position, for that may not bring the desired result. It was further suggested by Roy that attainment of spiritual realization, freed from the material conception of life, is the topmost achievement for a living being. The Lord rejected this suggestion also because on the plea of such spiritual realization, much havoc has been wrought by unscrupulous persons. Therefore, all of a sudden, this is not possible. The Roy then suggested sincere association of self-realized souls and from any worldly position, hearing submissively the transcendental message of the pastimes of the personality of Godhead. This suggestion was welcomed by the Lord. This suggestion was made following in the footsteps of Brahmaji, who said that the personality of Godhead is known as Ajita, or the one who cannot be conquered or approached by anyone. But such Ajita also becomes Jita, conquered, by one method, which is very simple and easy. The simple method is that one has to give up the arrogant attitude of declaring oneself to be God himself. One must be very meek and submissive and try to live peacefully by lending the ear to the speeches of the transcendentally realized soul who speaks on the message of Bhagavad Dharma, or the religion of glorifying the Supreme Lord and his devotees. To glorify a great man is a natural instinct for living beings, but they have not learned to glorify the Lord. Perfection of life is attained simply by glorifying the Lord in association with a self-realized devotee of the Lord. The self-realized devotee is he who surrenders unto the Lord fully and who does not have attachment for material prosperity. Material prosperity and sense enjoyment and their advancement are all activities of ignorance in human society. Peace and friendship are impossible for a society detached from the association of God and his devotees. It is imperative, therefore, that one sincerely seek the association of pure devotees and hear them patiently and submissively from any position of life. The position of a person in the higher or lower status of life does not hamper one in the path of self-realization. The only thing one has to do is to hear from a self-realized soul with a routine program. The teacher must also deliver lectures from the Vedic literatures, following in the footsteps of the bygone acharyas who realized the absolute truth. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommended this simple method of self-realization, generally known as Bhagavata Dharma. Srimad-Bhagavatam is the perfect guide for this purpose. Above these topics discussed by the Lord and Sri Ramananda Roy, there were still more elevated spiritual talks between the two great personalities, and we purposefully withhold those topics for the present because one has to come to the spiritual plane before further talks with Ramananda Roy can be heard. We have presented further talks of Srila Ramananda Roy with the Lord in another book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And of course this was before he published the Chaitanya Charitamrita, so now we have the full teachings of Ramananda Roy, Lord Chaitanya to Ramananda Roy, in which Lord Chaitanya asked the questions and Ramananda Roy gave the answers. At the conclusion of this meeting, Sri Ramananda Roy was advised by the Lord to retire from service and come to Puri so that they could live together and relish transcendental humors. Sometime later, Sri Ramananda Roy retired from the government service and took a pension from the king. He returned to his residence in Puri, where he was one of the most confidential devotees of the Lord. There was another gentleman at Puri of the name Shiki Mahiti, who was also a confidant like Ramananda Roy. The Lord used to hold confidential talks on spiritual values with 3 or 4 companions at Puri, and he passed 18 years in that way, in spiritual trance. Well, hello. Hare Krishna. How are you? Hare Krishna, Dr. G. Please sit in one of the seats. Sit in that chair there. Yeah. This one's more comfortable. This one here. No, this one here. Please. Please. Yeah, it's a little, when you sit for a long time and listen, it's not bad to have a comfortable seat. Even yogis sit comfortably. Especially bhakti yogis. Hare Krishna. Okay. We're reading from the introduction of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, and Srila Prabhupada very wisely chose to put a summary of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes in the introduction, because Lord Chaitanya, Krishna came in the form of Lord Chaitanya to teach the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And we're hearing now about the meeting of Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy, who ended up being one of the confidants of Lord Chaitanya. The Lord used to hold confidential talks on spiritual values with 3 or 4 companions at Puri, and he passed 18 years in that way in spiritual trance. His talks were recorded by his private secretary, Sri Damodar Goswami, one of the 4 most intimate devotees. The Lord extensively traveled over the southern part of India. The great saint of Maharashtra, known as Saint Tukaram, was also initiated by the Lord. Saint Tukaram, after initiation by the Lord, overflooded the whole of the Maharashtra province with the Sankirtana movement, and the transcendental flow is still rolling on in the southwestern part of the great Indian peninsula. The Lord excavated from South India 2 very important old literatures, namely the Brahma Samhita and Krishna Karnamrita, and these 2 valuable books are authorized studies for the person in the devotional line. The Lord then returned to Puri after his South Indian tour. On his return to Puri, all the anxious devotees of the Lord got back their life, and the Lord remained there with continued pastimes of his transcendental realizations. The most important incident during that time was his granting audience to King Prataparudra. King Prataparudra was a great devotee of the Lord, and he considered himself to be one of the servants of the Lord entrusted with sweeping the temple. This submissive attitude of the king was very much appreciated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The king requested both the Bhattacharya and Roy to arrange his meeting with the Lord. Then, when however the Lord was petitioned by his 2 stalwart devotees, he flatly refused to grant the request, even though it was put forward by personal associates like Ramananda Roy and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. The Lord maintained that it is dangerous for a sannyasi to be in intimate touch with worldly, money-conscious men and with women. The Lord was an ideal sannyasi. No woman could approach the Lord, even to offer respects. Women's seats were accommodated far away from the Lord. As an ideal teacher and acharya, he was very strict in the routine work of a sannyasi. Apart from being a divine incarnation, the Lord was an ideal character as a human being. His behavior with other persons was also above suspicion. In his dealings as acharya, he was harder than the thunderbolt and softer than the rose. One of his associates, Junior Haridas, committed a great mistake by lustfully glancing at a young woman. The Lord, as Supersoul, could detect this lust in the mind of Junior Haridas, who was at once banished from the Lord's association and was never accepted again, even though the Lord was implored to excuse Haridas for the mistake. Junior Haridas afterwards committed suicide due to being disassociated from the company of the Lord, and the news of his suicide was duly related to the Lord. Even at that time, the Lord was not forgetful of the offense, and he said that Haridas had rightly met with the proper punishment. On the principles of the renounced order of life and discipline, the Lord knew no compromise. and therefore, even though he knew that the king was a great devotee, he refused to see the king only because the king was a dollar and cents man. By this example, the Lord wanted to emphasize the proper behavior for a transcendentalist. A transcendentalist has nothing to do with women and money. He must always refrain from such intimate relations. The king was, however, favored by the Lord by the expert arrangement of the devotees. This means that the beloved devotee of the Lord can favor a neophyte more liberally than the Lord. Pure devotees, therefore, never commit an offense at the feet of another pure devotee. An offense at the lotus feet of the Lord is sometimes excused by the merciful Lord, but an offense at the feet of a devotee is very dangerous for one who actually wants to make progress in devotional service. As long as the Lord remained at Puri, thousands of his devotees used to come to see him during the Ratha Yatra car festival of Lord Jagannath. And during the car festival, the washing of the Gundicha temple under the direct supervision of the Lord was an important function. The Lord's congregational Sankirtan movement at Puri was a unique exhibition for the mass of people. That is the way to turn the mass mind towards spiritual realization. The Lord inaugurated this system of mass Sankirtana, and leaders of all countries can take advantage of this spiritual movement in order to keep the mass of people in a pure state of peace and friendship with one another. This is now the demand of the present human society all over the world. After some time, the Lord again started on his tour towards northern India, and he decided to visit Vrindavana and its neighboring places. He passed through the jungles of Jharkhand, Madhya Bharata, and all the wild animals also joined his Sankirtan movement. The wild tigers, elephants, bears, and deer all together accompanied the Lord, and the Lord accompanied them in Sankirtana. By this he proved that by the propagation of the Sankirtan movement, congregational chanting and glorifying of the name of the Lord, even the wild animals can live in peace, friendship. And what to speak of men who are supposed to be civilized? No man in the world will refuse to join the Sankirtan movement. Nor is the Lord's Sankirtan movement restricted to any caste, creed, color, or species. Here is direct evidence of his great mission. He allowed even the wild animals to partake in his great movement. On his way back from Vrindavan, he first came to Prayag, where he met Rupa Goswami, along with his younger brother, Anupama. Then he came down to Varanasi, Benares, where he became the guest of Sri Tapan Mishra and Chandrasekhara, assisted by a Maharashtra Brahmana. At that time, Varanasi was headed by a great sannyasi of the Mayavad school named Sripad Prakashananda Saraswati. When the Lord was at Varanasi, the people in general became more attracted to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on account of his mass Sankirtan movement. Wherever he visited, especially the Vishwanath temple, thousands of pilgrims would follow him. Some were attracted by his bodily features, and others were attracted by his melodious songs glorifying the Lord. The Mayavadi sannyasis designate themselves as Narayana. Varanasi is still overflooded with many Mayavadi sannyasis. Some people who saw the Lord in his Sankirtan party considered him to be actually Narayana. And this report reached the camp of the great sannyasi, Prakashananda. In India, there is always a kind of spiritual rivalry between the Mayavad and the Bhagavad schools. And thus, when the news of the Lord reached Prakashananda, he knew that the Lord was a Vaishnava sannyasi, and therefore he minimized the value of the Lord before those who brought him the news. He deprecated the activities of the Lord because of his preaching the Sankirtan movement, which was, in his opinion, nothing but religious sentiments. Prakashananda was a profound student of the Vedanta, and he advised his followers to give attention to the Vedanta. and not to indulge in Sankirtana. One devotee Brahmana, who became a devotee of the Lord, did not like the criticism of Prakashananda, and he went to the Lord to express his regrets. He told the Lord that when he uttered the Lord's name before the sannyasi Prakashananda, the latter strongly criticized the Lord, although the Brahmana heard Prakashananda uttering several times the name Chaitanya. The Brahmana was astonished to see that the sannyasi Prakashananda could not vibrate the sound Krishna even once, although he uttered the name Chaitanya several times. The Lord smilingly explained to the devotee Brahmana why the Mayavadi cannot utter the holy name of Krishna. The Mayavadis are offenders at the lotus feet of Krishna, although they utter always Brahma, Atma, Chaitanya, and so on. And because they are offenders at the lotus feet of Krishna, they are actually unable to utter the holy name of Krishna. The name Krishna and the personality of Godhead Krishna are identical. There is no difference in the absolute realm between the name, form, or person of the absolute truth, because in the absolute realm, everything is transcendental bliss. There is no difference between the body and the soul for the personality of Godhead Krishna. Thus he is different from the living entity who is always different from his outward body. Because of Krishna's transcendental position, it is very difficult for a layman to actually know the personality of Godhead Krishna, his holy name and fame, and so on. His name, fame, form, and pastimes are all one and the same transcendental identity, and they are not knowable by the exercise of the material senses. The transcendental relationship of the pastimes of the Lord is the source of still more bliss than one can experience by realization of Brahman or by becoming one with the Supreme. Had it not been so, then those who are already situated in the transcendental bliss of Brahman would not have been attracted by the transcendental bliss of the pastimes of the Lord. After this, a great meeting was arranged by the devotees of the Lord, in which all the sannyasis were invited, including the Lord and Prakashananda Saraswati. In this meeting, both the scholars, the Lord and Prakashananda, had a long discourse on the spiritual values of the Sankirtan movement, and a summary is given below. The great Mayavadi sannyasi Prakashananda inquired from the Lord as to the reason for his preferring the Sankirtan movement to the study of Vedanta Sutra. Prakashananda said that it is the duty of the sannyasi to read the Vedanta Sutra. What caused the Lord to indulge in Sankirtan? After this inquiry, the Lord submissively replied, I have taken to the Sankirtan movement instead of the study of Vedanta, because I am a great fool. The Lord then represented himself as one of the numberless fools of this age who are absolutely incapable of studying the Vedanta philosophy. The fool's indulgence in the study of Vedanta has caused so much havoc in society. The Lord thus continued, and because I am a great fool, my spiritual master forbade me to play with Vedanta philosophy. He said that it is better that I chant the holy name of the Lord, for that would deliver me from material bondage. In this age of Kali, there is no other religion but the glorification of the Lord by utterance of His holy name, and that is the injunction of all the revealed scriptures. And my spiritual master has taught me one shloka from the Brihan Naradiya Purana. Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nastyeva, 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 Gatyaranyata. So on the order of my spiritual master, I chant the holy name of Hari, and I am now mad after this holy name. Whenever I utter the holy name, I forget myself completely, and sometimes I laugh, cry, and dance like a madman. I thought that I had actually gone mad by this process of chanting, and therefore I asked my spiritual master about it. He informed me that this was the real effect of chanting of the holy name, which produces a transcendental emotion that is a rare manifestation. It is a sign of love of God, which is the ultimate end of life. Love of God is transcendental to liberation, mukti, and thus it is called the fifth stage of spiritual realization, above the stage of liberation. By chanting the holy name of Krishna, one attains the stage of love of God. And it was good that fortunately I was favored with the blessing. On hearing this statement from the Lord, the Mayavadi sannyasi asked the Lord what was the harm in studying the Vedanta along with chanting the holy name. Prakashananda Saraswati knew well that the Lord was formerly known as Nimai Pandit, a very learned scholar, Navadvip, and his posing as a great fool was certainly to some purpose. Hearing this inquiry by the sannyasi, the Lord smiled and said, "My dear sir, if you do not mind, I will answer your inquiry." All the sannyasis there were very much pleased with the Lord for his honest dealings, and they unanimously replied that they would not be offended by whatever he replied. The Lord then spoke as follows. Vedanta Sutra consists of transcendental words or sounds uttered by the transcendental personality of Godhead. As such, in the Vedanta, there cannot be any human deficiencies like mistake, illusion, cheating, or inefficiency. The message of the Upanishads is expressed in the Vedanta Sutra, and understanding the direct meaning of what is said there is certainly glorious. Whatever interpretations have been given by Shankaracharya have no direct bearing on the sutra, and therefore such commentation spoils everything. The word Brahman indicates the greatest of all, which is full with transcendental opulences, superior to all. Brahman is ultimately the personality of Godhead, and he is covered by indirect interpretations and established as impersonal. Everything that is in the spiritual world is full of transcendental bliss, including the form, body, place, and paraphernalia of the Lord. All are eternally cognizant and blissful. It is not the fault of the Acharya, Shankara, that he has so interpreted Vedanta, but if someone accepts it, then certainly he is doomed. Anyone who accepts the transcendental body of the personality of Godhead as something mundane certainly commits the greatest blasphemy. The Lord thus spoke to the sannyasi almost in the same way that he spoke to the Bhattacharya of Puri, and by forceful arguments he nullified the Mayavada interpretations of the Vedanta Sutra. All the sannyasis there claimed that the Lord was the personified Vedas and the personality of Godhead. All the sannyasis were converted to the cult of bhakti. All of them accepted the holy name of Lord Sri Krishna, and they dined together with the Lord in the midst of them. After this conversation of the sannyasis, after this conversion of the sannyasis, the popularity of the Lord increased at Varanasi. Can you get that little red, there's a little red plastic thing on my desk. It's either on my desk or next to the bed on the table. Thank you. After this conversion of the sannyasis, the popularity of the Lord increased at Varanasi, and thousands of people assembled to see the Lord in person. The Lord thus established the primary importance of Srimad-Bhagavatam, of Srimad-Bhagavata Dharma, and he defeated all other systems of spiritual realization. After that, everyone at Varanasi was overwhelmed with the transcendental Sankirtan movement. While the Lord was camping at Varanasi, Sanatana Goswami also arrived after retiring from office. Formerly known as Sakara Malik, he had been one of the state ministers in the government of Bengal, then under the regime of Nawab Hussain Shah. He had some difficulty in getting relief from the state service, for the Nawab was reluctant to let him leave. Nonetheless, he came to Varanasi, and for 2 months the Lord taught him the principles of devotional service. He taught him about the constitutional position of the living being, the cause of his bondage under material conditions, his eternal relation with the personality of Godhead, the transcendental position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his expansions in different plenary portions of incarnations, his control of different parts of the universe, the nature of his transcendental abode, devotional activities, their different stages of development, the rules and regulations for achieving the gradual stages. No, it's a little red plastic thing. Really? He taught him about the constitutional position of the living being, the cause of his bondage under material conditions, his eternal relation with the personality of Godhead, the transcendental position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his expansions in different plenary portions of incarnations, his control of different parts of the universe, the nature of his transcendental abode, devotional activities, their different stages of development, the rules and regulations for achieving the gradual stages of spiritual perfection, the symptoms of different incarnations in different ages, and how to detect them with reference to the context of revealed scriptures. The Lord's teachings to Sanatana Goswami form a big chapter in the text of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and to explain the whole teachings in minute details will require a volume in itself. These are related. These are treated in detail in our book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. At Mathura, the Lord visited all the important places, and then he reached Vrindavan. Lord Chaitanya appeared in the family of a high caste Brahmana, and over and above that, as a sannyasi, he was the preceptor for all the varnas and ashramas. But he used to accept meals from all classes of Vaishnavas. At Mathura, the Sanodiya Brahmanas are considered to be in the lower status of society. But the Lord accepted meals in the family of such a Brahmana also, because his host happened to be a disciple of the Madhavendra Puri family. At Vrindavan, the Lord took bath in 24 important bathing places, or ghats. He traveled to all the 12 important vanas, forests. In these forests, all the cows and birds welcomed him as if he were their very old friend. The Lord also began to embrace all the trees of those forests, and by doing so, he felt the symptoms of transcendental ecstasy. Sometimes he fell unconscious, but he was made to regain consciousness by the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. The transcendental symptoms that were visible on the body of the Lord during his travel within the forest of Vrindavan were all unique and inexplicable, and we have just given a synopsis only. Some of the important places that were visited by the Lord in Vrindavan were Kamyavan, Adishwara, Pavana Sarovara, Kandivarana, Sheshashayi, Kelatirtha, Mandiravan, Bhadravan, Srivana, Lohavan, Mahavan, Gokula, Kalyaradha, Dwadashaditya, Keshitirtha, and so on. When he saw the place where the rasa dance took place, he at once fell down in trance. As long as he remained at Vrindavan, he made his headquarters at Akruvaragat. From Vrindavan, his personal servitor, Krishnadas Vipra, induced him to go back to Prayag to take bath during the Magh Mela. The Lord acceded to this proposal, and they started for Prayag. On the way, they met with some Patans, amongst whom there was a learned Maulana. The Lord had some talks with the Maulana and his companions, and the Lord convinced the Maulana that in the Quran also there are descriptions of Bhagavad Dharma and Krishna. All the Patans were converted to his cult of devotional service. When he returned to Prayag, Srila Rupa Goswami and his youngest brother met him near the Bindu Sarovar temple. Thank you. This time, the Lord was welcomed by the people of Prayag. more respectfully. Vallabhabhata, who resided on the other bank at Prayag in the village of Adaila, was to receive him at his place. But while going there, the Lord jumped into the river Yamuna. With great difficulty, he was picked up in an unconscious state. Finally, he visited the headquarters of Vallabhabhata. This Vallabhabhata was one of his chief admirers, but later on, he inaugurated his own party, the Vallabha Sampradaya. On the bank of the Dashashameda Ghat of Prayag for 10 days, continually, the Lord instructed Rupa Goswami in the science of devotional service to the Lord. He taught the Goswami the divisions of living creatures in the 8,400,000 species of life. Then he taught him about the human species. Out of them, he selected the followers of the Vedic principles. Out of them, the fruitive workers. Out of them, the empiric philosophers. And out of them, the liberated souls. He said that among liberated souls, there are only a few who are actually pure devotees of Lord Sri Krishna. Srila Rupa Goswami was the younger brother of Sanatan Goswami, and when he retired from service, he brought with him 2 boats full of gold coins. This means that he brought with him some hundreds of thousands of rupees accumulated by the labor of his service. And before leaving home for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he divided the wealth as follows: 50% for the service of the Lord and his devotees, 25% for relatives, and 25% for his personal needs in case of emergency. In that way, he set an example for all householders. The Lord taught the Goswami about devotional service, comparing it to a creeper, and advised him to protect the bhakti creeper most carefully against the mad elephant offense against the pure devotees. In addition, the creeper has to be protected from the desires of sense enjoyment, monistic liberation, and perfection of the Hatha Yoga system. They are all detrimental on the path of devotional service. Similarly, violence against living beings and desire for worldly gain, worldly reception, and worldly fame are all detrimental to the progress of bhakti or Bhagavad Dharma. Pure devotional service must be freed from all desires for sense gratification, fruitive aspirations, and culture of monistic knowledge. One must be freed from all kinds of designations, and when one is thus converted to transcendental purity, one can then serve the Lord by purified senses. As long as there is a desire to enjoy sensually, or to become one with the Supreme, or to possess the mystic powers, there is no question of attaining the stage of pure devotional service. Devotional service is conducted under 2 categories, namely primary practice and spontaneous emotion. When one can rise to the platform of spontaneous emotion, he can make further progress by spiritual attachment, feeling, love, and many higher stages of devotional life for which there are no English words. We have tried to explain the science of devotional service in our book, The Nectar of Devotion, based on the authority of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Srila Rupa Goswami. Transcendental devotional service has 5 stages of reciprocation. 1. The self-realized stage just after liberation from material bondage is called the Shanta, or neutral stage. 2. After that, when there is development of transcendental knowledge of the Lord's internal opulences, the devotee engages himself in the Dasya stage. By further development of the Dasya stage, a respectful fraternity with the Lord develops, and above that, a feeling of friendship on equal terms becomes manifest. Both these stages are called the Sakhya stage, or devotional service in friendship. Above this is the stage of parental affection toward the Lord, and this is called the Vatsalya stage. 5. And above this is the stage of conjugal love, and this stage is called the highest stage of love of God, although there is no difference in quality in any of the above stages. The last stage, conjugal love of God, is called the Madhurya stage. Thus he instructed Rupa Goswami in devotional science and deputed him to Vrindavan to excavate the lost sites of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. After this, the Lord returned to Varanasi and delivered the sannyasis and instructed the elder brother of Rupa Goswami. We have already discussed this. The Lord left only 8 shlokas of his instructions in writing, and they are known as the Shikshastaka. All other literatures of his divine grace were extensively written by the Lord's principal followers. All other literatures of his divine cult were extensively written by the Lord's principal followers, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan and their followers. The cult of Chaitanya philosophy is richer than any other, and it is admitted to be the living religion of the day, with the potency for spreading as Vishwadharma, or universal religion. We are glad that the matter has been taken up by some enthusiastic sages like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj and his disciples. We shall eagerly wait for the happy days of the Bhagavad Dharma, or Prema Dharma, inaugurated by the Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The 8 shlokas completed by the Lord are, and these 8 shlokas expound the process of devotional service from the beginning to the end. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. 2. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by chanting your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. 3. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. 4. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service in my life, birth after birth. 5. O son of Maharaj Nanda, Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms of your lotus feet. 6. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? 7. O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in this world in your absence. 8. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. That is Lord Chaitanya's teachings, and it goes from the very first stage of purification of the heart to full-blown love of God, separation. Okay. Now we've reached the text of the Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is divided into 12 cantos, and each canto is actually an individual unit, but as we heard in the preface, it's better that they are heard sequentially in small parts, cover to cover, to get the full effect and the full education, the full teachings. So here we go. Yes, please.
Do you take questions in this? I don't know what the format is.
Absolutely. But what we do is we'll read a little bit more, maybe another 5-10 minutes,
Okay.
and then we'll take reflections, comments, questions, and whatever else you have in your heart to offer the assembled sages. Okay. Canto 1, Srimad-Bhagavatam. Chapter 1. Questions by the sages. Text 1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmad Yasyanyatod Vayan Itadatash Charteshu Abhigya Swarat Tain He Brahmarida Yaadi Kavaye Muyantiyat Suryaha Tejo Vari Mridam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargong Risha Damna Swena Seda Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Padam Dhimahi. O my Lord Sri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge under the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire, or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. So the whole Srimad-Bhagavatam rests on this shloka, and 18,000 verses will explain this one verse. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. We may not make it through the whole purport because it's a very long purport. We'll go as far as we can go. Then we'll take questions and comments. Purport. Obeisances under the personality of Godhead Vasudeva directly indicate Lord Sri Krishna, who is the divine son of Vasudeva and Devaki. This fact will be more explicitly explained later in the text of this work. when Sri Vyasadeva directly asserts that Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead and all others are his direct or indirect plenary portions or portions of the portion. Srila Jiva Goswami has even more explicitly explained the subject matter in his Krishna Sandarbha, and Brahma, the original living being, has explained the subject of Sri Krishna substantially in his treatise named Brahma Samhita. In the Upanishad and in the Samaveda, it is also stated that Lord Sri Krishna is the divine son of Devaki. Therefore, in this prayer, the first proposition holds that Lord Sri Krishna is the primeval Lord, and if any transcendental nomenclature is to be understood as belonging to the absolute personality of Godhead, it must be the name indicated by the word Krishna, which means all attractive. In the Bhagavad Gita, in many places, the Lord asserts himself to be the original personality of Godhead, and this is confirmed by Arjuna, who also cites great sages like Narada, Vyasa, and many others. In the Padma Purana, it is also stated that out of the innumerable names of the Lord, the name of Krishna is the principal one. Although the name Vasudeva indicates the plenary portion of the personality of Godhead, and although all the different forms of the Lord, being identical with Vasudeva, are thus indicated in this text, the name Vasudeva particularly indicates Krishna, the divine son of Vasudeva and Devaki. Sri Krishna is always meditated upon by the Paramahamsas, who are the perfected ones among those in the renounced order of life. Vasudeva, or Lord Sri Krishna, is the cause of all causes. Everything that exists emanates from the Lord. How this is so is explained in later chapters of this work. This work is described by Mahaprabhu Sri Chaitanya as the spotless Purana, because it contains the transcendental narration of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The history of the Srimad-Bhagavatam is also very glorious. It was compiled by Sri Vyasadeva after he had attained maturity in transcendental knowledge. He wrote this under the instructions of Sri Narada Ji, his spiritual master. Vyasadeva compiled all Vedic literatures containing the 4 divisions of the Vedas, the Vedanta Sutras, or the Brahma Sutras, the Puranas, the Mahabharata, and so on. But nevertheless, he was not satisfied. His dissatisfaction was observed by his spiritual master, and thus Narada advised him to write on the transcendental activities of Lord Sri Krishna. These transcendental activities are described specifically in the Bhagavatam's 10th canto, which is considered its substance. But in order to reach the very substance, one must proceed gradually by developing knowledge of the categories. It is natural that a philosophical mind wants to know about the origin of the creation. At night, he sees stars in the sky, and he naturally speculates about their inhabitants. Such inquiries are natural for man because man has a developed consciousness which is higher than that of the animals. The author of Srimad-Bhagavatam gives a direct answer to such inquiries. He says that the Lord Sri Krishna is the origin of all creations. He is not only the creator of the universe, but the destroyer as well. The manifested cosmic nature is created at a certain period by the will of the Lord. It is maintained for some time, and then it is annihilated by his will. Therefore, the supreme will is behind all cosmic activities. Of course, there are atheists of various categories who do not believe in a creator, but that is due to a poor fund of knowledge. The material scientist, for example, has created space satellites, and by some arrangement or other, these satellites are thrown into outer space to fly for some time at the control of the scientist, who is far away. Similarly, all the universes with innumerable stars and planets are controlled by the intelligence of the personality of Godhead. And we'll stop there. Hare Krishna. Okay, so I'm going to make a bookmark. Okay, now's your time to shine. Go ahead.
Actually, I don't know if my question is beyond my ability to understand, but I've always been confused by, just going back to the introduction, this, the 5 stages. Because I can't understand the difference because we each have our eternal constitutional spiritual nature in relationship to Krishna. But then in the 5 stages it says it's a development, or we can go to different types of relationships.
Yeah. She's asking the question, what's your name, I'm sorry?
Karunamayi.
You're Karunamayi? The Karunamayi? After all this time, I'm finally meeting you. I mean, no wonder you asked such a meaningful question. Thank you very much, Karunamayi. So she's asking a slight confusion that sometimes arises, and that is that the 5 different in the introduction it mentioned 5 different stages or 5 different relationships that are available with Krishna in the spiritual world. But it also indicates there's kind of a hierarchy, and it kind of hints that maybe one goes from one to another. So the fact is that each individual soul has a relationship with Krishna, fixed. There's no difference in terms of high and low in the spiritual world. Every relationship is absolute. And every person Krishna loves, and everyone loves Krishna in a particular relationship. And the relationships that we have with one another here in the material world are actually reflections of those original relationships in the spiritual world. And that's why, particularly in human relationships, we only have those 5 relationships. Every relationship we can think of can be categorized in one of those 5 relationships: neutrality, servitude, friendship, parental love, and conjugal love. So I just read the answer to this question, so I have it on the tip of my tongue. Must be some Krishna transcendental arrangement for you. Yeah, there's no difference. All the relationships are absolute. And Krishna loves all the souls equally. Samoham sarvabhuteshu, name dvesha stina priyaha. He's equal, samoham, to all living beings. Samoham sarvabhutani. Bhutani means living beings. Not just the human beings, but even other human beings, other species. He loves them all equally. Name dvesha stina priyo. None are dearer to him than others, and none are disliked by him. But in the exchange of transcendental humors or transcendental mellows of relationship, there are different degrees of intimacy. It's a question of intimacy, different degrees of intimacy. So one person may have different relationships with different persons of different degrees of intimacy. And Prabhupada uses the example, a good example, of a high court judge. The high court judge, when he walks into the court, everybody it's a protocol. everyone must stand up. I don't know what they do. Maybe they go like this, or maybe they have some. In all countries, there's some. They say, "Your Honor," and he's, everybody stands up and gives him some proper respect. So a person gets some taste from being treated like that. I mean, judges work hard. Well, anyway, Hare Krishna. They're supposed to work hard and become neutral and, represent the law. But anyway, whatever's going on now is another thing. But, so he gets some rasa. The subject matter is rasa, is the taste of relationship. But when he goes back out of the court and, his little son comes to visit him, his little son may make him get down on his all fours and get on his back and ride him like a horsey. Get up. And he'll, carry his son on the horse. Now he gets a rasa from that. He gets a pleasure from that, and it's sweeter. But it's not that, he doesn't appreciate it, doesn't have. So the same man is getting these different relationships and different tastes from different persons. Then he goes home to his wife, and then there's something even sweeter going on, something more intimate going on there. So it's not a mechanical thing. We have a tendency to analyze things academically or mechanically based on our linear training, in linear thinking. Right? But there's no limitations in the spiritual world, especially in Goloka Vrindavan. In the Vaikuntha planets, the relationships go up to a formal friendship, servitude and formal friendship. And there is conjugal, but it's only one person. That's the goddess of fortune, has a conjugal relationship with Krishna. And there are men and women, and they have their families, and they have their conjugal relationships. But in terms of relationship with Krishna, there's only one female who has a relationship with Krishna in conjugal love. But in Goloka Vrindavan is the place where the most intimacy is shared with Krishna in all the relationships. And when a spiritual scientist analyzes the different rasas, he comes to the conclusion that there are more mellows in each successive higher, or each successive more intimate, let's not say higher, let's say more intimate relationship. It's like, how to explain it? When a person loses someone who's dear to him, if he loses, an acquaintance that he has a regular service relationship with, a servant or a person that you buy your newspaper from on your way to work every day, or whatever, that you have a kind of a rasa, and if that person is all of a sudden not there, you feel some lacking, feel some separation. But if a person is a friend, and all of a sudden that friend goes, you feel more. If child goes, you feel more. If a husband, wife, or lover goes, you feel even more separation. The intensity of the relationship is deeper. So all those relationships are the same in relationship to Krishna, and every one of them in the spiritual world is completely satisfied with their relationship, because that's who they are in relationship to Krishna. So sometimes immature devotees, they think that we need to shoot for being a gopi because that's the most intimate and it's more pleasing to Krishna and it gives him more intimacy, so therefore I'll be a gopi. But you can't become a gopi or a cowherd boy or a parental figure, anybody, anything in the spiritual world just by thinking about it. That's why in those prayers to Lord Chaitanya, they're very important, He starts by glorifying the holy name in the process of chanting the holy name, because the heart becomes purified, and then gradually by developing a service relationship to the name, by becoming submissive to the name, and submitting to everyone and everything, and chanting continuously, then one becomes freed from all material dross and material contaminations and designations, and then one awakens one's feeling of separation for Krishna. And eventually, the relationship that we have with Krishna specifically is awakened. Now the process of that happening isn't mental. We can't decide that we want to be a gopi, so I'll just hear about gopis, and then when I leave my body I'll become a gopi. It's not like that. But there is a process of hearing and chanting the holy name, japa, and in congregational chanting, and hearing the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur calls this incidental hearing. If you hear the Bhagavatam, verse by verse, purport by purport, all the way through, then you get to hear about all these relationships. And you get to hear about all the different environments in the spiritual world, and all the different relationships that different devotees have for incarnations of Krishna, or expansions of Krishna, or even Krishna himself. And those things go on all the way through the Bhagavatam. For instance, in the very first canto, there are some descriptions of relationships that Krishna has in the spiritual world in Goloka Vrindavan. In the second chapter, in the third canto also, there are descriptions of relationships, more intimate relationships. And then, but it's just, how do you say, kind of a passing subject matter. And eventually, when we become purified and we become more aware and more knowledgeable, then we're allowed to enter the 10th canto. And then you hear about the relationships that Krishna has in Vrindavan, in Mathura, in Dwarka, in the spiritual world, in all of its glory. And through that process, then when we get to the end, we start again. And then when you get to the end again, then you start again. And in that process, I'm recording the Chaitanya Charitamrita for the BBT as an audiobook. And I'll do the Bhagavatam also afterwards. And I just came across a very wonderful purport in which Srila Prabhupada kind of describes this process of incidental hearing indirectly. So I'll read it to you. Is it okay?
Yes, please.
So far, so good?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I have to go. I have to find it. Don't mind. Just give me a minute. Chapter 4, text 34. Yeah. Special, natural appreciation of the descriptions of a particular pastime of Godhead indicates the constitutional position of a living entity. Adoration, servitorship, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love are the 5 primary relationships with Krishna. The highest perfectional stage of the conjugal relationship, enriched by many sentiments, gives the maximum relishable mellow to the devotee. Now, in Goloka Vrindavan, everyone shares in that maximum mellow. Even though they don't have the same degree of intimacy as the gopis do with Krishna, they all share in the mellow of that relationship, because they're all serving Radha and Krishna in one way or another. Even the cowherd boys are, they want to be with Krishna, so they go out into the forest, and some of the gopis are out there, and they want Krishna to go over here, and then there's some kind of competition between them. And the relationships in the relationship they share, they taste all these things together. So even in Goloka Vrindavan, even the gopis are the only ones who have conjugal relationships with Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, in Brajadam. But all of them taste something about that. Even the plants and the trees, and the birds and the deer, because they're out there in the forest, and all of a sudden they'll be running around and they'll come across Radha and Krishna. Ooh, what's going on here? And because when they're together, there's an atmosphere created, and that atmosphere spreads everywhere, and everyone shares in it. So it's not that the relationships are the same as the relationships here. They're unlimited, they're not limited. Sometimes Krishna arranges so that he can be the son of all the women in Braj, including the cows. And he allows them to feed him from their breast, from their udders. So in this way, sometimes, in special occasions, they share the tastes. There's family life there, and the parents love their children, but they love Krishna even more. So Krishna is the center of all the relationships, in the spiritual world, in Goloka Vrindavan, in Brajabhumi, which is a duplicate, a replica of that spiritual world here in the material world when he comes personally. So by hearing and appreciating and going through the Gita and finding out who we are and finding out who Krishna is and establishing our relationship and actually surrendering to Krishna in the heart, then things open up, and gradually we find out who we are. First of all, we have to find out that we're not the body. That's philosophical, basically. Then we have to find out what we are, not what we aren't. And we're a part of Krishna. And gradually we'll find out who we are in relationship with Krishna. By the process of devotional service. By constant hearing, by constant chanting, by constant serving the deity, by constant association with the devotees, like this, and hearing over years and years and years and years. And when you get absorbed, then these things are revealed to you. It's a process of revelation. It's not an academic process. You don't find out about it just by memorizing the verses and repeating the shlokas back and getting a grade on an exam, like you do in a mundane educational institution. So it's not easy to understand all these things.
That's why I said it's probably way beyond my ability to understand.
Did that help, what I said?
But for us, like on the material plane, we're
She's saying that like us on the material plane, when hearing these things, then
we don't know how. I don't know my position at this time.
yes.
But I can still taste some mellow when I hear about the conjugal. I mean, obviously not a full manifestation, but there's sweetness there.
Well, it's like I said, in the spiritual world, everyone tastes that sweetness, whether you're a friend or you're a blade of grass, or whoever you are. So it's not that just because you taste that sweetness, that means you're necessarily a gopi, or that's your rasa with Krishna in the spiritual world. But as you become purified, and as you advance in devotional life, and to become advanced in spiritual life, you have to become serious. You have to become very serious. It's not that you can get an honorary degree, do something wonderful, get an honorary degree, and it happens sometimes. Guru Kripa or Krishna Kripa, the mercy of the spiritual master can give siddha. There's sadhana siddha. There are persons who get perfection through the sadhana. There are those who get by kripa siddha, by getting the special mercy of the spiritual master, a pure devotee, or of Krishna, especially Lord Chaitanya, because he's so merciful. And there's nitya siddha. There's those who are always perfect and come here from the spirit, like Srila Prabhupada. Never forget Krishna in his whole life, and can make the whole world Krishna conscious by his association. So we have to take the process, not expect that we're going to get honorary degree, and even if we begin to get an inkling by, it says here, we just read, by a special natural appreciation of a certain pastime of Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, we may become naturally attracted to that. That's why these words, special and natural appreciation, are very, very important. There are, there are obstacles, there are temptations, to try to go to that position too soon or prematurely. But that doesn't mean that we can't hear and appreciate. But we shouldn't dwell there unless we actually are getting real revelation. And even if we are, we shouldn't show it. Because the persons who are going there prematurely, they're really eager to share it and talk about it in public. And we just heard in that pastime of Lord Chaitanya, in that little, summary of his pastimes, how when he was in Puri, even when he was in the most exalted state of Radha Bhav, of his relationship as Radharani to Krishna, and he was tasting that, he wouldn't talk about it with only 4 people. He would never talk about it in public, never, anywhere. So therefore, when devotees start to do it, go dwelling in certain places and certain things, you should be careful. Our model is Srila Prabhupada. Our model, Prabhupada is our founder Acharya. He's the Shiksha Guru of everyone in our movement, and the Diksha Guru of some of us, and the Shiksha Guru, he's Shiksha and Diksha Guru for us. And so he embodies the example and teachings of all the previous acharyas for us in our movement. And even those of us who initiate disciples and are acting as spiritual guides, we get our empowerment from him. So if we follow his example and his mentality, then we're safe. Really safe. But it's natural. I've been a devotee for a long time. It's natural to want to know about those things and to want to go there and to want to awaken. But first things first. First we have to realize we're not the body, and become fixed in that conception and in the practices that demonstrate that to Krishna. It's like there's a lot of talk about how we have to have faith in Krishna, full faith and surrender to Krishna. But there's not that much talk sometimes about how Krishna has to have faith in us. So we have to, what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, first deserve and then desire. Or, it's like we have to act in such a way. Don't try to see Krishna, Prabhupada said, but act in such a way that Krishna will want to see you. When we go in front of the deities, it's not that you're coming in front of the deities to give him your darshan. You're coming in front of the deities to get the darshan of Krishna so he can see you and be pleased by your devotion, attachment for him. So the goal of spiritual life is to become attached to Krishna and attached to the process of devotional service, attached to the Vaishnava devotees who are fixed in devotional service. And the more attached we become, then our taste increases until finally we get to the 8th verse. Whether you treat me nicely or not, I'm yours. Unconditionally. Never give you up under any condition. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Yes, Hannah.
Just two things.
Not that any of them would want to change their relationship.
But are the roles ever changed in Goloka?
There's no rules. There are no rules in Goloka Vrindavan. Oh, roles. Well, like I said, yeah, everyone has a relationship with Krishna and it's fixed. You see, because we're here, we're thinking, well, wouldn't it be nice if we could also be that relationship and also that relationship? There's no limitations in the spiritual world. But everyone's happy.
So like...
No one's thinking the coward boy says, I wonder what it would be like to be like a gopi, and maybe if I'm, really good, I can become a gopi in the future. They don't think like that. It doesn't exist. Because they're in their natural position. They're in their natural relationship.
Does Krishna ever move it around?
Say that again?
Does Krishna ever move it around?
Well,
like if somebody, I understand what you're saying, how they all taste that so they don't even desire it. So I guess the question is pointless. But I'm just wondering
the question is pointless. The question is pointless because it comes from a material conception. We're thinking, well, then something must be missing. If I can't taste that, then they must be feeling something missing, because we're feeling something missing. If we can't have this kind of relationship or that kind of relationship or this or that or whatever. But in spiritual, it's not like that. In the spiritual world, there's no difference between the body and the soul, first of all. There's no embodied souls in the spiritual world. The soul is the body. The consciousness is the body. The body is conscious. Now we're stuck inside this robot, this bag of bones and unmentionable things inside. And it's covered by a certain skin, a certain way. And now that we're thinking we're this or that or whatever. But it's all but in the spiritual world, it's not like that. Everyone has their original and, full relationship with Krishna. And Krishna is able to, like when Krishna comes into the material world, his pastimes are called prakat. That means manifested to us in the material world. But the spiritual world and the spiritual activities are called aprakat. That means not manifested, aprakat. unmanifested, not manifested. So in the spirit, therefore, when Krishna comes into the material world, he agrees to follow the dictates of time and space, just to set an example for others, and therefore he goes from one place to another, and the devotees in one place have to wait until he goes to the other place to be with him. But in the spiritual world, there's no time and space.
Is that why Srila Prabhupada said that if you just chant Hare Krishna, you will feel, me and you, all of us will be in the same place together?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And not only that, but Krishna, he's in all of our hearts. And he knows all of us, and he knows all of what we've done, all what we're doing, and all what we're going to do. In the spiritual world, he doesn't need to be in the heart to know that, because he can be with everyone at the same time. So we're thinking there must be something lacking. What if Krishna's over there with the cowherd boys, and I'm a gopi, and I want to be over there? Maybe I could change myself into a cowherd boy and go over there, and then I could be. No, he's with everyone at the same time. He can be everywhere at the same time. The spiritual world is infinite dimensional. That's the idea. Now you're getting it. See here, in the material world, we relate to space in terms of every point is there in space, and it has a coordinate. You can tell where every point is by a coordinate. Now that's how they do the GPS system from the satellites. And the distance between one point and another is measured in terms of space. That's how space is measured. So if something's far enough away, then you can't see it. Or something far enough away, you can't hear it, because it's in another point, another place in space. It's relative. Three-dimensional space. So, but in the spiritual world, Krishna is in every point. He's in every point here also. He's in every atom as the super soul. So he can be everywhere at the same time. Sometimes devotees might think that Krishna comes from the spiritual world down. Well, he does in a sense, but really what happens is he's everywhere, and he can manifest himself anywhere, at any time, in any form, and still be Krishna. That's God. I'm here now, so I can't be in my room at the same time. But Krishna can be everywhere. So the mystic powers that devotees accumulate, or yogis aspire for and achieve, are just a little tiny drop of Krishna's mystic power. So in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, it's described that if a devotee becomes fully absorbed in one of Krishna's potencies or one of Krishna's qualities, then he can achieve a different kind of mystic power. It says that a yogi with mystic power can become lighter than the lightest, or heavier than the heaviest, or smaller than the smallest, or he can escape from any place because he could just shrink himself down and go to another. But it's not exactly like that. It's that he gets the capacity to bring the thing that's farther away closer through the medium of Krishna's unlimited mystic power, because Krishna's everywhere all the time. And in the spiritual world, it's like that openly. Manifests. Here it's unmanifest. Our Dr. Pokala, Hari Vallabh has a question or a point? Or Hare Krishna.
I just was thinking about all these questions.
Our doctor was thinking about all these questions.
In the spiritual world, everything
In the spiritual world, everything
is happening
is happening
for the pleasure of Krishna.
for the pleasure of Krishna,
As per the will of Krishna. Right?
as per the will of Krishna.
If that is so, naturally all the living entities, all the spirit souls should have blissful experience.
Therefore, all the spirit souls should have blissful experience,
Irrespective of what their positions are.
irrespective of what their positions are. Exactly. Yes. Correct. And furthermore, Krishna, he enjoys also. In other words, he enjoys being with us. And there's always a competition between him and us, who's going to please the other more. And because all of the relationships are there and all the rasas are there, we talked about the 5 primary rasas, but there are also 7 secondary rasas. And all of those, comedy, fear, ghastliness, all these kinds of things. And here we go to a movie and we want to get scared. So we go to, a scary movie. We get some kind of, tingly whatever. We get some. Yeah, this is all perverted reflections of the real thing. So you can't, just by trying to understand these things, you can't understand these things. What it's like in the spiritual world, it's not possible. You have to go there. One time somebody asked Prabhupada, how come Krishna's blue? Prabhupada looked at the devotee and said, why don't you ask him? Prabhupada was so spot on. He never missed a beat, He always had just exactly the right thing to say at the right time. We can only aspire, a little drop of his enthusiasm and his love for Krishna and love for everyone. So the symptoms of those who are pleasing Krishna and are loving Krishna are described in the Bhagavad Gita in the 12th chapter, and one of them is that he never disturbs anyone and he never becomes disturbed by anyone. Yeah, Hannah's got one more thing.
Well, I have another question, but I wanted to just think about that. So you know how you said that there's
5 primary relationships.
And in the spiritual world, they're there. The center of them is Krishna. And so I made a note earlier, and I said that where we are now is no different from where we'll be, because our soul is eternal. So we should work on establishing that relationship with Krishna being the center now, even in situations of fear, even in situations where we're giving love to our children, or love to a partner, or love to a friend, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But if unless you have your love for Krishna awakened, then you can't give actual love to a partner or a friend or to anyone else. Yeah, because you're not, the relationships we have here in this material world, the forms change. So you may have that relationship and you may be having an exchange and it may be nice, but then poof, the person's gone. Yeah, poof, it's gone. So that isn't actual, you're not actually giving love. There is no love in the material world. But when we actually awaken our love for Krishna, then by that reciprocation with Krishna from within the heart, then our vision changes, and we can see that the person's a soul, and we can give affection spiritually, not because of the body, not because it's male or female or young or old or has this father or mother or whatever they are. you know. Of course, it doesn't mean that we, you know, don't have those relationships, or we don't have the natural affection that you have for different relationships in the mature world. It's still there, but it's not the same. It's not the same. When Krishna is in the center, if I have a relationship with my partner or my son or my friend or whatever, and we're doing something for Krishna, for Krishna's pleasure, then that affection becomes real.
Is it also that when we know that when we have a fulfillment in our relationship with Krishna, then we're not looking through other relationships to find fulfillment. It's more.
Yes, more or less. More or less, it's like that. Yeah. Yes, but when you awaken your love for Krishna, then you naturally feel more affection or more affection for others, because they're part of Krishna. It's like the Vedas describe the root. If you put the water in the root, then automatically the whole tree all the parts of the tree get watered. But if you try to water the parts without watering the root, then it doesn't work. So if we try to have relationships separate from Krishna, that's what the material world is. The material world is a place where everyone is trying to have relationships separate from Krishna. That's what the material world is.
That's the whole reason for it.
That's the whole reason why we came here. Ichcha dvesha samotina dvandva mohena bharata. This is the 7th chapter, and Krishna reminds Arjuna that everyone comes here, ichcha dvesha samotina, bewildered by ichcha, desire, and dvesha, aversion. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is the panacea for all problems in the material world. If one actually becomes Krishna conscious and awakens one's love for God, for Krishna, then one feels satisfied. And even the same things may be going on in the material world, you know, is it birth, death, old age, all these things are going on. But the devotee, the pure devotee, the fully realized Krishna conscious person, the Paramahansa, is not disturbed. Because he knows that those things they don't have anything to do with him. And even he may be in a family, and he may be in a relationship, and he may be doing all the things you have to do, and eating and sleeping, and going to the bathroom, and doing all the things that we have to do. It all goes on, and he's somewhere else with Krishna. That's to aspire for. But when we read these books, as we read the books, as we chant and hear, and take prasadam, and serve, then the realizations become gradually more precise, more clear, more precise, and gradually we wake up. Then when you hear the books, or when you see the deity, or when you are with devotees and taking prasadam or doing whatever you do, it's another world. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma, vijitatma jitendriya, sarva bhutatma bhutatma, kurvan api nalipyate. Even though we're in the material world, we're doing things, kurvan api nalipyate. We're not entangled by them. We don't become disturbed by them. Because yoga yukto vishuddhatma, we're working not for some gain for ourselves, but out of duty and out of care for others, and especially for Krishna. Vishuddhatma, pure. When our activities are pure and we stay engaged in devotional service, and Vegetendriya, our Majitendriya, our senses are controlled. We don't just run after what our mind and our bodies tell us to do. We're controlled according to the instructions of Krishna and the spiritual master, guidelines. And not that you're on a stick and you have to, it's not like that, but on the guidelines we become. Then sarva bhutatma. You become dear to everyone and everyone becomes dear to you. To that degree that you become fully Krishna conscious, you'll be dear to everyone and everyone will become dear to you. And kurvanapin libite. Then even you're acting in the world, you don't become affected by it in the same way. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Brinda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Thanks for your wonderful questions. Karunamai, thank you very much. Hana, as usual.